Happy Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. And what an extraordinary weekend to be remembering and to be celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. and his dream. Together We Rise is our theme for the year, and it is our theme for the month. And I had a topic that I was supposed to talk about today until these last weeks have happened. So Reverend Karen and I spoke about it, and we thought it was time that we addressed the state of the nation. And we talk about it from a spiritual point of view. As we have been engaged with conversation in classes and talking with people, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of, all over the map. There's a lot of anger, outrage. There's a lot of what in the world is going on. There's a lot of I don't even want to deal with it. I'm just gonna be my spiritual self. I don't even want to deal with it. There's a lot of agreement on all sides of what's going on. What there maybe isn't as much of is an understanding of how do we find our way through this? What's our part? Where do we stand? How do we even take it up? From the rhetoric of the around the election all the way through to insurrection and a taking over of the Capitol, to threats of violence, words of hate and intimidation. Yeah. So there's a number of things that I want to talk about. We'll see how it all weaves together. But I'm going to take as the structure for the conversation, I'm going to take the way in which we engage in preparing for a spiritual mind treatment. Because it is in the moving to prayer and the moving to spiritual mind treatment that we find our place to stand. And we speak and act aligned in truth. So what do we do when we sit down and decide that we want to do a spiritual mind treatment because there's something that we want to do prayer about? Well, the first thing we notice, there's something we want to do prayer about. And we start by naming the condition. Notice we don't pretend the condition doesn't exist. We don't deny it. We don't gloss over it. We start by naming the condition. And if it were in my own personal life, or if it was in an individual life, we might name the condition of ill health, or we might name the condition of having lost a job, or we might name the condition of wanting to grow a business, or we might name the condition of, right? Do you see? We name the condition. We speak about what it is that we're currently experiencing. So the condition that I would name is the outpicturing of the way in which our culture and our society has continued to operate. We see the outpicturing of the desire for power above all else. The forgetting that a government's job is to govern, which means to create a container within which businesses, people, and the resources of our earth actually thrive. That's the job of government, because we can't individually do it. We need to give that task to a collective group of people. And people, when they go into government, should have the idea that what is best for the people, the businesses, and the resources of our planet all have to be brought together. And yet what we see is the desire for power. We can see how that has been outpictured in our desire for wealth, and how that has built into that desire for power. And we see it in the way in which the disparity of the way people in our country are treated based on the color of their skin. We see the outpicturing of the protests, the Black Lives Matter protests all summer. People speaking for their presence, for their own lives, for their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. People joining in being for that, and how that was treated, spoken about. We witnessed peaceful protesters being beaten, pushed off the streets. And yet armed people moved into our capital on the 6th of January, and they did not receive the same response. Oh yes, there were many police who did in fact seek to keep those people out, but it wasn't enough. And now we're facing the consequences. This is the condition. And it's an outpicturing of the polarization of our political system and the vilifying of the person who doesn't agree with us. The cornerstone of it. The vilifying of someone who doesn't agree with us, which is the antithesis of a civil society. A civil society is considered that third place. The civil society is the third place, which is the container in which people can have meaningful and thriving lives. Not work, not govern, but have meaningful and thriving lives. And in our country, we believe in the plurality of those lives, the diversity of those lives, the power of each person to become the greatest that they can be. That's the heart of the American dream. And yet not everybody has access to that American dream. This is the condition. And we've seen it played out. This is what we do when we start a spiritual mind treatment. But what we don't do is then stay stuck in the condition. We ask ourselves, what is this condition revealing? What is being revealed through my lack of prosperity, through the loss of a job, through the fact that my health isn't well, through the fact that I don't have the relationship I want, or my business hasn't grown yet? What's being revealed? And so we can look at all of these things and ask ourselves, what's being revealed? And sometimes we even recognize that being brought to this moment, to want to do prayer about something in our lives, it means that we are ready to heal it. We're ready for a different experience. That's the good news of naming the condition. The good news of naming the condition is that it is visible to us. We no longer are saying, well, it just has to be this way. There's no other way to imagine it. This is just the way it is. This is just, I don't know, this is how I grew up. This is how I see it. This is just the way it is. We're able to name the condition because we can see in our, or sense in our heart, in our minds, that there's a possibility beyond this condition. And something is being invited to be revealed. So as horrific and outrageous that whole experience was, something is being revealed to us. That's the good news. And if we're willing to look steadily at it, we ask ourselves the next question. This is exactly what we do when we move into a spiritual mind treatment. What is the next question? What does the changed condition look like? What does the changed condition look like? Sometimes that changed condition is very specific in form. This cancer is gone. This bone is healed. This much money now is available to me. Sometimes it's more general. My body is healthy. My finances are healthy. Sometimes it's I'm experiencing the abundance of life and I'm open to how that is going to express. But in every case, whether we are very specific in the outcome or whether we are speaking about the quality of life experience that we expect to have in the changed condition, we build a mental idea, an image, a mental equivalent of that changed condition. We describe it to ourselves. I now have a job that supports me financially. We now have a country in which all people are, in fact, understood to be created equal. We now see that everyone has the same opportunity, and if they need help for that opportunity, that's called equity. We name the changed condition. Our military and our police officers recognize that their job is to protect everybody equally, to hold every person, regardless of the color of their skin, in exactly the same way according to the laws, so that our prisons aren't filled with black men and our homes empty of them. Do you see, we begin to name what does the changed condition look like. If you want to know what Science of Mind believes about that, or Centers for Spiritual Living, you can go to CSLDallas.org and you can look up the global vision. A world that works for everyone and lives that work for us. Do you see, these two things are not in opposition to each other. So part of our changed condition is the recognition that it all has to work together. Government and business and our own personal lives and civil society, this all has to form the whole, which is the outpicturing of the wholeness of life itself, of the oneness within which we are living, moving, and having our being, of the very oneness that is seeking to pour itself through us. That oneness, we imagine the condition in which that oneness is revealed in this systemic engagement with life, where all of it is actually working as a whole, as opposed to pieces of it seeking power, pieces of it seeking profit, pieces of it seeking to make sure that whatever they have, we have, is not lost or taken away, but is actually seen as a whole. I name the changed condition. Well, then the next thing I have to do when I'm preparing myself for a spiritual mind treatment is I have to ask myself, so what needs to be revealed in consciousness for that changed condition to happen? For that changed condition to be outpictured based on the law of cause and effect. Oh, wait, I have to start tracing back to what we call the mental cause. And I have to go back to my unhealed condition, the condition I want to change. And I have to ask myself, wow, what is that outpicturing? What is the mental cause within my consciousness that's outpicturing? So if I'm doing that for myself as an individual, I have to ask myself about my beliefs about money and abundance and my worthiness. If I'm dealing with a financial situation, if I'm dealing with relationships, I have to ask myself, do I actually believe relationships can be healthy? Am I just playing out the way my parents always were in relationship? Or do you see, I have to look at the mental cause, not because I've chosen to think these things, but because they are the thoughts that are in my consciousness, which have become beliefs, which have become subjectified, which are so unconscious that I don't even realize they're running my life. Until I'm willing to look at the condition and say that condition is an outpicturing of something that is going on unconsciously in my own subjective mind, which if I want that condition, that new condition, I actually have to change. I have to change the causal reality, which is the thoughts and feelings and ideas and attitudes which have become so subjectified that I'm no longer aware of them. I have to bring them to my awareness, look at them and say, oh, but that thought creates that condition and I don't want that condition anymore, so I have to find a new thought, a new belief, a new idea, and I have to begin to work to move into that place where I imagine that that is actually in alignment with the spiritual truth. Because I understand that it's the law of cause and effect. That's how creation happens. I don't have to will it or make it, or I don't have to actually try to figure out how does that condition become a new condition. I don't have to figure out all the details of that. What I have to do is stay unshakenly fixed on the new condition. And over and over and over and over again, I have to be willing to allow the unconscious ideas, thoughts, and patterns to be revealed so that I can look at them and say, no, that is not the spiritual truth. This is what I believe the spiritual truth is. This is what I'm going to create my new condition out of. And if I can do that in my own personal life, if I do that to prepare for a spiritual mind treatment, this is precisely and exactly what we are being invited to do collectively, is to look at these conditions and to ask what unconscious biases, what unconscious patterns of belief about life, about people, about skin color, about superiority, about power, about profit, about planet, all of these things. We have to allow all of that to come up and ask ourselves, is this condition what we want to contribute to with these unconscious thoughts? And if it's not, because we have decided that there's actually a changed condition we want to bring about, then we must do the work to change the cause. We change that internal cause individually and collectively, because we're now talking about a collective set of thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, and ideas that we have seen played out before us in living color. The good news is it's all up to be healed. That's the good news. The other good news is that if we look over the course of history, we can see that more and more and more and more people are in fact willing to wake up to the condition and to say no to the mental cause that creates the condition. To say, no, that's not the spiritual truth. It's not the spiritual truth that black people are not equal. It's not the spiritual truth that we get to rape and pillage the planet for our own profit and greed. It's not the spiritual truth that we aren't all in this together. It's not the spiritual truth that we can run amok and think that it's all going to be okay. These things are not the spiritual truth, and so we can say no to them. Now, there's, I think, a lot of misunderstanding in the science of mind and in New Thought that we can't say no because somehow we're going to, I don't know, we're going to give it too much energy. But we're talking about a universal no, not a denial of the condition, because clearly it's happening, but a denial that there is anything in alignment with spiritual truth that is keeping that condition in place. So you ask, well, what is keeping the condition in place? Those unconscious thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, unexamined, that are continuing to run us. And what's the primary quality of those thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs that create those conditions? New Thought and Science of Mind would not call it evil. We would call it ignorant. Not ignorant as in uneducated, not ignorant as in stupid, not ignorant as in I don't know, what else could we say? But ignorant of spiritual truth. Ignorant of the fact that we are all one, because we are all part of the one infinite power and presence. We are life itself expressing. And if we want any one of us to thrive, we have to all thrive. We are so intimately connected. Certainly, if the pandemic has taught us nothing else, it has taught us that. It is the ignorance of the spiritual truth and the ignorance of the way the universal laws work of cause and effect, that the inner intention and causal reality of unconscious beliefs that are playing out over centuries of propaganda, centuries of conspiracy theories, centuries of these things that have been designed to keep certain people in power. We get to say no to that's not the spiritual truth. We get to say no to that. And we turn to say yes to what we believe is the spiritual truth. And we allow that to become the causal impulse behind that condition. So at about this point, if I'm doing this for my own personal life or I'm doing this for the collective, I'm almost ready to do my spiritual mind treatment. And then when I sit down and I do my spiritual mind treatment, I think, man, I don't know. Do I have enough power to do this? Sometimes I think I have enough power in my own life because I can make it happen. But do I really have the power to change the collective consciousness? And this is when we remember that it's not our power that we're using. It's not our power that we're using. It's the power of the universal law of cause and effect and the power of love that is pouring through us. It's not our power at all. We also recognize that when we do our spiritual mind treatment, we're not praying to something. So it's not that we have faith in God or even faith in the law to make the new condition happen. When we speak our word in a spiritual mind treatment and we do our spiritual work, we are speaking the word of God as the individualized expressions of the infinite power and presence of God. So that means at that moment, when we sit down to do our spiritual mind treatment, we are God speaking to God about God's spiritual truth. There's no condition in the world, I don't care how big it is, that is bigger than that infinite power and presence. So yes, when we sit down to do our spiritual mind treatment, we have the power to change any condition because we have the power to say no to that which is not in alignment with spiritual truth and to move in alignment with spiritual truth with our thoughts, grounding them in our beliefs and our emotions and our feelings of the reality of it and expecting it to manifest. Now, I've done my spiritual mind treatment. Does it manifest like that? Oh, not necessarily. Not necessarily. This is where in the science mind we talk about treat and move your feet. Treat and move your feet. I have a number of fabulous quotes, which I've already gone by, which I'm not going to stop and look for. But there are fabulous quotes in Can We Talk to God by Ernest Holmes, where he talks about the fact that we cannot sit and pray and meditate all day. He actually says 30 minutes, it's enough. 30 minutes is enough. Because you are called to express life. Not just to sit in meditation and prayer, but we now have to move in the world based on the new idea, the new thought. And we move in the world with confidence and expectation. And every day we do something, one thing, that moves us in the direction of that outpicturing, of that changed condition. We listen to the inner guidance. We feel the impulse. We hear that sense of, oh, try that, or what about that, or maybe those people, or let's get together. Let's see what or we just blindly start walking and the path rises to meet our foot because the law must manifest the changed condition. And our task is to be so committed to the changed condition that regardless of what happens in the world, we are unshaken in that condition happening, that changed new condition. And I have to tell you, as horrific as the experiences were that we've had this last summer, the amount of people that stood up and said, no, this is not acceptable. Black lives do, in fact, matter as much as anybody's life matters. We all are a part of this. The amount of people that stood up for that already shows that consciousness is shifting. So one of the things that I know is that after I've done my spiritual mind treatment and I do start walking confidently in the direction of my new changed condition, all of the things in my consciousness that don't agree with that changed condition, boy, do they show up. And I get to look at it. And every single time I get to make a decision. Am I going to get sucked back into the vortex of the old thinking? And go, see? Yeah, see, there, it doesn't work. See, there, it's just the same. See, there. Or am I going to continually say, no, that's not the spiritual truth. This is the spiritual truth, and continue to move towards that changed condition. Because it is over and over and over again going to reveal itself to us. Because now we have two sets of beliefs that are operating. And our job, individually and collectively, is to continually choose the set of beliefs that will manifest as the changed condition that we want, which is a world that works for everyone and lives that work for each of us. So we shouldn't be surprised. We should not be surprised when the going gets tough. We should not be surprised. We should not get into an ain't it awful position. We should not find ourselves sucked into it to the best of our ability. What we do is we allow our anger, our outrage, or our confidence to let us say no to that and yes to what we choose. Our work starts in consciousness. Our work starts with a clear-eyed willingness to look at what's really going on. There's another quote from Howard Thurman that says, and I'm paraphrasing, when we are willing to look at the truth, everybody runs away afraid. But it's the only thing that will move the needle. We have to be willing to look at the truth. And we have to do it with strength, courage, and commitment. I have a dear friend who put out on Facebook the other day, a while back, he said, well, do I have to love all these people? Is that really possible? Do I have to love all these people? Can I just be mad? Yeah. There's a reason for outrage. It's telling us that there are beliefs that have to come to the surface to be healed because the condition is not acceptable. And so we have to do something about that. And that takes strength and courage. Martin Luther King Jr. was very inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. And there's a quote that Albert Einstein is credited with, but it's actually a quote from Mahatma Gandhi because Albert Einstein was also hugely influenced by Gandhi. And the quote is, when people think that religion and politics shouldn't mix, they don't understand either. The root of our civil society are our values and our belief about the nature of life, of people, of what the point of life is. And in the science of mind, we believe that the point of life is to create powerful, meaningful lives that are an outpicturing and a reflection of the individualized expression of truth and love and life that we are. When we are motivated in that way, we move towards that changed condition. But we don't do it because we're manipulating a shell game. We do it because we know the truth. We know the truth of who we are, and we know the truth of who each and every person is. And so, yes, now is the time. If not now, when? If not us, who? Now is the time for us to be so committed to our spiritual principles and practices that becomes embedded in consciousness and is continuing to further the outpicturing of the dream of a world that works for everyone and lives that work for each one of us. This is what we're here to do. And that is an outpicturing of the spark of life that is the truth of each of our lives, that our lives are here to further and represent, and not just represent, and to be. So if you want to know what we believe about all of this, we believe that it is our job to show up as the spark of creation. It is our job to fan the flame of that spark in each and every one of us. It is our job to express and to glorify that spark so that together we rise in a flame of light, the light of love, which heals everything.